Hi folks, Francis Walsh here again with thedigitalmerchant.com, and in this video we're going to be looking at the best online business brokers and marketplaces. So these are essentially a variety of different platforms you can use if you're buying or selling a business, typically an online business. They range from kind of, open marketplaces with a lot of, direct buyer and seller interaction, to more involved brokers where the platform will take an active role and will do more of the vetting and things like that. So really what this is going to be about is figuring out which of these best suits your business, because depending on the point of the market at which your business is at, depending on how valuable it is, how what the revenue generation looks like, what kind of buyers you're typically looking for, that's really going to inform this process. So that's the main thing I would like you to take with yourself kind of as you go through this, that it really is all about specificity here. It's all about your needs. So selling a business, obviously it's a big deal, regardless of the size of it. It's a huge decision. And brokers and marketplaces can simplify the process, but only if you pick the right one. So if you do go to the wrong place for this, it can be, wasted expense. You might end up listing your business for a few months only to realize it's a waste of your time, or you might end up spending too much on a broker and end up parting with too big a percentage of, the proceeds of the sale. So I suppose the advantages of using a broker and a marketplace: the time saving is obviously a big one. It's quite a time consuming process trying to vet buyers by yourself. You typically do bring in higher sales values when you have an expert on your team. And then I suppose on the other side, there's commissions, I suppose, is the big drawback. You don't want to part with the percentage of your sale if you can avoid it. And you do lose a certain amount of control, and you do have to be a little bit careful about the buyer filtering processes that are in place. So it's all just something to kind of take into account. Obviously it's an expense, it's an investment, so you need to make sure you're making the right call. So what should you look for when you're trying to pick one of these brokers? The first thing I say, and this is a theme I think that would arise in a lot of my videos, but you do need to make sure that the business or the platform you're choosing is catering to your type of business, because transactions do vary quite a lot from one to the next depending on the area in which you're working. So if you're a SaaS platform, it's going to be different than if you're a physical business, than if you're an e-commerce platform. It's just, there are a lot of differences to be aware of, and some platforms cater to certain types of businesses specifically, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail as this goes on, but it's just something to be aware of. Clear pricing, this is another thing I'm a huge fan of. I really like it when businesses excuse me, I really like it when businesses lay out their pricing structure clearly, and don't hide behind don't try and get you on a sales call before sharing the pricing structure or things like that. You should know what kind of price point you're looking at before you do too much research on a transaction, so that you can do the same across multiple platforms and figure out which offers the best value for what you're looking for. Then access to serious vetted buyers. Now this varies highly from platform to platform, and again we'll get into this as the video proceeds, but certain platforms do a really good job of vetting their buyers and making sure that you're not dealing with potential scammers or time wasters, tire kickers, all that kind of thing. Depending on the level of service you require, this may not be a huge priority. Like if you're only selling a small business or a blog or a website and it's only going for a few $100s, it may not be worth investing in the level of service that some of these firms are going to give you when it comes to vetting, because look, it does cost money. That is the thing. It's a rigorous process, and if you're going to get it done properly, it's going to set you back a little bit in terms of cost. And then transparent process and fair valuation. Yeah, so this essentially, again, it varies from broker to broker, the extent to which valuation will be on them. In certain cases, you can submit your own valuations. Now, of course, if you're a buyer, this has drawbacks too. You would prefer to be buying from a platform where there is a third-party valuation method, just so that you're not dealing with sellers who inflate their own valuations, and that you have to do a lot of your own research to figure out whether something actually represents fair value. But again, something we can dig into on a platform by platform basis as we proceed. So the first company I'm looking at here is Quiet Light. Quiet Light, to be honest, I'm a huge fan of what they do. I think for the right business, they are probably the best option. But it is important to realize, I suppose, that they are they do cater to the upmarket section of business purchases and sales. Realistically, if you're a smaller business, the level of service on offer here is probably a little bit too high for you. But if you are a business and you're dealing with, six-figure revenues, I think this is the place to go. It was set up by, a former entrepreneur, and all the consultants that work on the team also have experience of starting businesses and of exits and of all that kind of thing. So you're getting people who know what your pain points are, what your priorities are. You know that these things will be taken seriously when you get involved. Their vetting process is really good. You're not going to be wasting time with tire kickers, and they do have a good record of getting sales over the line. 85% of sales on the platform happen within 90 days, that's a really, really good strike rate. It's better than a lot of the others you're going to deal with here. The one downside I would say is that they're not that transparent about pricing. It's not that clear from the website what kind of commission they're going to charge. So this is a slight concern, but again, they're very customer service focused. So once you get involved in that initial conversation with your representative, you can hash out pricing at that point. So yeah, generally huge fan of Quiet Light. Think they do a great job, and would highly recommend, if you're in that upmarket category, to at least go for a free consultation and discuss what the process might look like for you. Now, so BizBuySell is the next platform we're going to be looking at. And this is very much, I suppose, a platform as opposed to like an active brokerage. It is a place where, there's a huge amount of buyer and seller autonomy. Essentially, it's as sellers just list their assets for sale, and buyers then pick through the offerings on the platform, and both parties come to an agreement on that basis. The big selling point of BizBuySell is its scale. Like, it's probably the biggest platform of this type that's out there. It's been involved in over 100,000 sales. It has 65,000 new listings every year. And for certain sellers, this is a big selling point because, if you're selling something niche, or if it's just, a small type of offering that's only going to appeal to a certain type of buyer, it is a good thing to be exposed to that many potential buyers because you have a better chance of finding someone who is actually going to take you on. However, I do feel like the lack of involvement of any sort of broker is a kind of a huge drawback here. BizBuySell aren't known for having the best customer support. There are quite a lot of tire kickers, a lot of scammers on the platform. So, it's just something to be aware of, that like there's going to be a lot more expected of you in terms of vetting and in terms of figuring out if your buyer is suitable here than will be the case on another platform. So to be honest, unless it's a smaller business and you're really not interested in investing in a kind of a proper brokerage service, I would probably avoid BizBuySell personally. So the next one we're going to look at is Flippa, and Flippa is another platform that I've looked at on this platform before. It's kind of going to be along the same lines as BizBuySell. It's very much a platform where buyers and sellers interact bilaterally. And like, I prefer it to BizBuySell personally. I think generally the quality of interaction there is better on Flippa. But the same problems still arise when it's a platform situation. Like, you're dealing with buyers who may not be serious. You're dealing with tire kickers, potential scammers. There's a lot of that you'll have to weed through. As soon as you list your business for sale, you're probably going to be inundated with messages, and only a certain percentage of those are going to actually be serious inquiries that are worth your while taking seriously. So yeah, again, it's well suited to the lower end of the market. If you've got something worth a couple of $100 or a few $1,000, and it's not a huge priority for you, definitely put it up here. I suppose another aspect of this that I would note at this point is that pricing for like for this kind of platform arrangement, it's a little bit higher here than maybe it should be, and particularly if your business gets into the kind of the higher end of value. The percentages that Flippa will end up taking, they are maybe higher than they should be. But if you are working with a lower value business, I think this probably is the place for it. I think it gets a lot of exposure. And people do report getting good deals done on Flippa. So if you're at that position, I would recommend looking into Flippa. Now, Acquire.com Now, as I was saying at the start of this video, there is something to be said for platforms that cater to kind of a niche in terms of industry. So that's kind of what Acquire is. They deal primarily with SaaS startups, as you can see here on the website. So if you are a SaaS startup, I suppose this is a good place to start looking, because there are a lot of features that cater to you specifically. In terms of its structure, it's kind of like, Flippa and Biz Buy Sell in terms of there's a lot of automation. The Acquire team don't get as involved in transactions as teams on other platforms. To be honest, if you're kind of a smaller SaaS platform, I would recommend probably looking at Acquire instead of Flippa. And even if the deal size is that little bit bigger, because I think the average deal size on this platform is around 250,000, which is, it's quite decent. It's a decent sized company. And also the percentage of that size of deal that Acquire will take will be quite a bit cheaper than what you'll find on Flippa. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this for kind of SaaS startups at the smaller end of the scale. Definitely worth a look. I like a lot of what they do. So businessesforsale.com. As you can probably tell by looking at the website here, it's a little bit old fashioned. This is one of the older platforms in this space. It's been around since before the .com boom, and consequently it does kind of deal with a different vertical than the other platforms here. It is more focused on physical businesses, I would say, than online businesses. You can find quite a few online businesses on the platform. I mean, it's a very big platform, but a much smaller proportion, I would say, than on other platforms. There's quite a lot of variation here, to be honest. You'll find all sorts of things for sale, including, like, say, vineyards, the likes of that kind of thing. And so if you have something like that that's not really an online first business, this can be a good place for it. It's quite affordable, and there's also a free period at the start that is quite useful to let you have a look around and kind of see how everything works. To be honest, if you're dealing with like a SaaS platform, an e-commerce platform, anything online based, I wouldn't deal with businesses for sale. I would look elsewhere. I just think that there is probably a better, more aligned version of this for you elsewhere. But if you're selling a physical business, I think this is where I would start. Empire Flippers. Curation is really the name of the game here. They make a big effort to funnel buyers and sellers together in an appropriate way so that you are kind of dealing with buyers who are interested in what you're trying to sell. They do act more like a broker than, say, a platform like some of the others we've looked at here. So they'll charge kind of a commission structure based on your sale value. There's no listing fees here as there are with, say, Flippa. And so, yeah, for selling a bigger business, I think they do a lot of things well. To be honest though, if you're not you probably want to be doing revenue of 100K plus, in order to consider Empire Flippers, or for them to consider you, I suppose, more accurately. They don't really deal with smaller sales that much. But yeah, other than that, I like the platform. I think people have done a lot of good deals there. If you do have a bigger business, it's definitely worth checking out. There are a lot of qualified buyers there that are looking to do serious business. So Onfolio. Onfolio is actually quite different to anything we've looked at so far, in that it's not a broker or a platform really. They actually buy businesses from sellers directly. They're a publicly listed company, so they're a big operation. Like that, they kind of only deal really with bigger operations themselves. So you'd want to be doing, I think, 500,000 annual profit is the minimum limit to get involved. So obviously it's only really big businesses at the bigger end of the scale that are going to be potentially interested in this. But I think, if you are at that level, obviously that's a niche that you need to appreciate. You're not going to put a business of that size on Flippa really, or Biz Buy Sell, or one of those. So if you're at that level, I would certainly look at Onfolio. My one concern, and I suppose it's a necessary evil, but my one concern would be the kind of the due diligence process and the vetting process. It's quite rigorous, and it can take a while. So you could be waiting 3 months just to even hear whether you have any possibility of going forward with Onfolio. So I mean, if speed to market is a concern for you, that's obviously something to keep in mind. But yeah, if you're selling kind of a bigger business asset, this is certainly a good place to look. So Kind of in summation, I suppose, what is the right path to go down here if you're trying to sell a business? I've kind of laid out quickly the kind of pluses and minuses of the platforms I've looked at. I think for the most businesses, I think Quiet Light's going to be the best option. I think they work not with the smallest of assets, but kind of from mid-market up, I think they provide a really good service. The customer service is top tier. The people you're working with are experts in their field. And in terms of the rest, I think, if you're dealing with something quite small in the kind of, hundreds or thousands of dollars range, Flippa is probably where I'd go. The self-service on it obviously makes things cheap. It can be a little bit expensive then if you get into the higher value stuff, and you'll also be dealing with scammers and kind of low quality buyers as well. But if you're at the lower end of the scale, I don't think that should matter too much. If you're a SaaS company, I would say Acquire is the first place to look, particularly if you're kind of at the mid-market and below sort of level. And then Onfolio for, those really big, valuable businesses that need a high quality sale. That's where I'd start looking there. But yeah, again, do your own research, look into the websites, and kind of maybe use this video as a starting point. And wishing everyone every success that watches this with their business sales. And so, yeah, that's all for me on this one. And I'll see you all in the next video.